Ideas from the new poetry.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to our fourth episode of Ideas from the New Poetry, incorporating poetry into a profoundly non-poetic society. And I like that phrase. So we are getting back from a 4 week or like a month hiatus. Leonardo has been in Spain right now working on a poetic project, and you also spent about a week in the countryside of France due to the heat wave, and I have been busy balancing my other musical projects and my poetic projects, and celebrating my 24th birthday last weekend, which was great. So today we're going to talk about poetry and incorporating beauty into your life because I think poetry is the best place to start with enriching your life with beauty, especially with enriching your mind. So first off, welcome back, Leonardo.
Uh, yes, I think that beauty and poetry is fitting together. It's more than a couple. I think it's the same person. I think beauty and poetry is really absolutely the same person because everything starts with the beauty. The words start with the beauty. And it's always looking for beauty, poetry. And of course, you can think that some poetry can be cruel, can be describing things what are quite horrible. I'm thinking about Lautréamont, who wrote this beautiful poetry called Mal d'Aurore, what have to do with very horrible things and cruelty. But even like that, I think there is beauty. So what is very interesting is that even if you take Lautréamont, if you take some passages where really very describing very cruel things, you still have the beauty always of the language, the beauty of the words, the beauty of the way how we describe the things. So at the end, even if he's describing horrible things, you always feel the beauty of his words. This is what is very interesting with poetry. That's why I think that poetry is beauty and beauty is poetry, and they fit together. So it's the same person.
Okay, I'll just do a quick synopsis. So Peter Hitchens was on Question Time, and he was asked if he could recite a poem uh, and talk about if poetry is useful in society. And he recited this poem by A.E. Housman, Into my heart, an air that kills, yon far country blows. What are those blue remembered hills? What farms, what spires are those? This is the land of lost content. I see it shining plain, those happy highways I once went and cannot come again. And he elucidated that poetry is a tool to refurbish your mind with beauty. And, I'm not much of a nationalist, but it can even be used as a nationalistic tool to keep your roots down with your own country. Because if you and he makes the case that if you sort of knock down poetry and say that it doesn't matter, you lose touch with a lot of what your ancestors knew and how your ancestors coped with their internal fires, their internal struggles. So those were his comments about that, and I want to know if you have anything to add.
I don't understand exactly because did he say? I really don't. Sorry, I really don't understand
No, you're good.
the idea. Sorry, my English is not so perfect for that. So, what did he found about society and poetry?
So
What
he
is?
defended two things: that for one, poetry is a tool to refurbish your mind with beauty, and When you have a collection of poetry memorized, your mind is sort of enriched almost with some of the most beautiful things humans have to offer. And he made the case that poetry is a tool to keep your roots, to keep in touch with the ancestors of your own country. You know, basically,
Yeah.
if you don't know the poetry of your own country, no matter how intelligent you are at other things, you won't be entirely in touch with the
Okay.
ancestors of your country. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Yep.
This is what I understood, but I wasn't sure. Yeah,
No, you're
of
good.
course. I think he's right. He's right because for two reasons. The first one is that, and no, I mean, mainly the first thing is that if you have poetry in your mind, if you carry poetry with you, poems, and that you have a connection with poetry and beauty, of course, you see the things very differently that what the world is. You know, it makes the reality a little bit different. And the second thing is that, of course, every poetry, because it has to do with the language, have some roots with the humanity, with the society, with the place where you are born, or the culture where you are coming from. That's evident. You can't. This doesn't mean that you can't understand other cultures or other countries. You know, you can always have some interest to poetry from other cultures. But the first one, at least, because you started with a language to speak your own language, and because of that, poetry and language is connected. So this is a part of the history of the place where you are born, or the place, the culture of your country. That is evident. You know, I mean, for example, I was born in Paris, and I think that my roots are very Parisian, are very much connected to the French culture and the French poetry. I mean, aesthetically, we're talking about beauty, but I grew up with that, you know, with that roots that of beauty. You know, if you take Ronsard, the way how we describe what we call the l'amour galant, you know, the love, aesthetically love, you know, from this poet from Ronsard and later from other ones, you know, in the 19th century with Baudelaire and all these great poets, you know, of course, and Verlaine and all this. It's typical French. It's typical Parisian even. It's very connected with the roots of the history of literature, but the history also of the people who built the nation, to build France. And this is why we have a French poetry, what is very special because, of course, it's very defending the beauty, but it's also a poetry very based on sensuality, on desire, on love. You know, it's a very different one than the English one, you know, that I love too, but are very different. You know, in France, you have very much connection with the sensuality of poetry. You know, not I mean, it's part of very much freedom also. Last time we talked about body, about dance, about ballet. You know, this is also what French poetry bring in the beauty. And of course, I have also Spanish roots, and Federico Garcia Lorca, Alberti, all these poets that my mother read to me influenced me too, you know, because it's a very different one than the French poetry, but not so much because we are Latins, and if you see, for example, the poet Luis de Góngora, what is the most famous Spanish Barroco poet, he influenced very much with his poetry, the French poetry, mainly creating a movement, what we call preciosity and libertinage, what was a way to describe the word, to describe your desire without to show it really, it's very much hidden in a way that you understand, but it's very hidden, it's a very strange way to communicate. And this have built completely the history of the French literature and the French history even, because after that they did that, the French revolutionaries, from the 18th century, they really were influenced about these ideas and about this movement of the way of to discuss the conversations, the way of to create a kind of freedom also with the life and with the love and with even the physical love and the erotism. The French poetry is erotic, really. It's something what is really very erotic, and French culture is erotic. It's not, there is not only that, but mainly you have that. You can't say that about German poetry. You can't say that about English poetry. You can't say that even with Spanish poetry, a little bit, but not so much. And this is why my poetry is very influenced about my culture, about my language, about the fact that, the beauty is also this, is connected with this form of aestheticism, of desires, of a kind of sensuality, And last time we discussed about the fact that I was also very inspired on the antiquity because the French, they took very much from the antiquity, but the Italians too with the Renaissance. But this is why, yes, we have absolutely something coming from the language, from the roots of our culture and bring us a lot. But this doesn't mean that you can't be interested in other countries, in other cultures, because it's also very interesting. I love English poetry. I love John Keats, and I love, Italian poetry. I love Russian poetry. I love American poetry. Doesn't matter. But still, we have something coming from our origin. What is the language?
Yep. And just the conclusion that I've come across in my life, spending a lot of my life doing poetry, is I think poetry makes you more resilient to adversity and hard times. So, as poets, we spend a lot of our time paying attention to beautiful language, beautiful images, beautiful moments. Do you think those things have the power to make you stronger, more resilient towards difficult times when they inevitably come?
I think both. The problem is that poetry can make you stronger. You're right. Because the way you see the world, the way you see reality can be changed in beauty. We have the power as poets to transform the reality, even if it's ugly, we can make it beautiful. We can bring beauty, what is give a lot of strength, a lot of power, but in the same time, as Baudelaire said in this poem, The Albatross, what is this blackbird, suffering because everybody don't want this anymore, You can be also completely out of the system because you're a poet.
Yeah,
so
that's what we've been talking about that a lot, about poetry being on the outside. Poetry being what's the because the French actually do have a word for it, a poet maudit. Is that how you say it? Poet
Yes.
maudit. Yeah.
Yes, and we can talk about that. It's very interesting, John. Yes, you know very well our culture. When you say poet maudit, nobody knows that so well, but poet maudit, what it means? It means that mainly a lot of poets from the 19th century, like Baudelaire, Verlaine, Rimbaud, Mallarmé, Lautréamont, imagine a lot, the main ones. Nobody knew them. Nobody understood them when they were in life. So they were living very poor. They were living even without to be some books, on libraries. You couldn't find anything. Imagine it's a miracle that later, you have some other movements like the surrealists, bring back, these big poets, these great poets to be masters. But poet Modi, this mean that. That means that in a way you nobody knows you, and worse than that, nobody understands you.
Yes.
And worse even than that is that your existence is really completely marginal. You get out completely of the system. And this is terrible. So this is why I was talking about two things. In a way, you get stronger because it's true. Beauty, poetry brings in your mind a lot of strength because culture brings strength always. We bring power. But in the same time, you can also be completely out of the system because of the way how you are, especially in a mercantile business, in a society, what the money, what's not all the money, everything is turned on money, is turned on to
Status.
Yeah, exactly.
Power.
So, voila, it's terrible for a poet who is a little bit
Yes,
fragile.
it is.
It can be completely off, and it's dangerous. So you have both. But still, I believe that even the poet Modi were really having a terrible life, awful life. They also have a beautiful life in a way, because the way, Rimbaud, Verlaine, this couple were in love, both. Okay, they suffer, they have problems. One got in prison even because he shot with a gun, it's terrible. But as Nietzsche said, it's a dangerous life can be also beautiful sometimes in a way. You can also see that by that way. They don't have the life of anybody. They have a special life. So it may be horrible, it may be terrible, it may be painful, but at least they have a very original life, very special to live, and at least because of that, it's something beautiful. But how many poets have been committing suicide? How many poets have been out completely of the system, because poetry can make you very fragile too. The same as it can make you very strong, it can be also very fragile.
And I think what's humorous, what's funny about this thing about poetry is that I don't think it can do anything in between. I think it can only do the polar opposites. It can only make you very, very strong or make you very, very sensitive. And neither of those are inherently bad, I don't believe. So more on beauty itself. Do you believe, oh, here we go again. Do you believe that, do you believe beauty is something that we discover or is it something that we create?
Oh, it's a very good question. My God. Oh.
Yeah. Loaded question.
It's a very, very philosophical question.
It is.
I think I want to answer like Picasso when he asked,
Picasso.
Are you looking, Pablo Picasso, what are you looking for? He said, I don't look, I find. And when you say I find, it means two things. It means that you're able to find. That means that you're looking for that in a way. And to find is something that comes to you. So you have the two movements. You have the movements to go and the movements to receive. But they are the same. In fact, you have to be aware for that. In fact, poetry, beauty, is to be aware. If you're not aware, you can't feel that, anything. That's make complicated. It's not for everybody. It can be, but it's not easy. Because a poet can see things that the others don't see. They can feel things what the other don't feel. And is that because they receive that, or is because they go to create that? I think it's the same. It's exactly the same, because what you create is what you're looking for, in a way. There is, the surrealist. I was talking about the surrealist. Maybe André Breton was the master of the surrealist. He wrote a book about his working with a girl and everything, what is going to be his wife. And when he's walking on the road, he's doing a promenade. He discovered that all the promenade, he did it before. He has all the sign of that before, like it happens the second time. That means that, like the surrealist said, is that there is no hazard, there is only meetings. It means that there is nothing really arriving by surprise, except that the surprise, it's a meeting. So you have both of the movements. But your question it's very philosophical, and it needs to be to think more about that, because it's not so easy. So back to your question, it's a very special question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, maybe we'll reflect more on it in future episodes. I don't mind doing that. I don't mind returning to old haunts. So as a poet, has your, I guess myself included, and this is definitely the case with me, but is it the case with you as well that your definition of beauty has changed throughout your lifetime? Like, are there things that you find beautiful right now that you didn't find beautiful 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago?
Oh. Yes, I think there is an evolution, yes. Because today, for example, and I see certain people, in the past, I should not find them beautiful, for example. I shouldn't find something very special. And sometimes when I meet a person, by coincidence, in a train, or I say, that person is a beautiful person, inspire me something. What is not in the past, what I should immediately react on that, I should maybe not pay attention on that person. The same with the landscape, the same with a lot of things. It's in a big evolution. For example, no, it's depending, For example, I find very beautiful things what people find extremely ugly. I remember that when I was an adolescent, I was in the car with my parents, and I was on the road, and I see a lot of buildings, what usually from a suburb people don't like at all. The architecture is made for very poor people. It's not really made for beauty. It's made for good people somewhere.
Transportation.
Exactly. But I found that beautiful. And I remember that I have a little tape, and I put on tape music, what I loved, fitting with that buildings. And even I paint buildings. I start with that. I start to paint buildings and put poetry on these buildings, what usually they are not considered as beautiful. But me, I find them beautiful. After that, I changed. And now I'm back again with that, because I'm living in close to Paris, in a suburb where it's not considered very beautiful. When I was living in the center of Paris, in Le Marais, what was very historical area, very beautiful. But now, when I see some buildings of the area around me, in my surrounding, I find them beautiful. I find them very interesting and beautiful. So, yes, beauty is a movement.
It is. It's a verb almost. I'll go over my example of that. My things that I found beautiful have changed actually pretty dramatically over the past several years. I tell my musical friends this all the time, but my biggest regret of my artistic career was actually not appreciating simplicity. I when I was a kid, I think this is natural for young people and kids to think that more is more. You know, I think it is very, very difficult for children to understand that less is more. It's not very intuitive, but I fell for that trap that more is more. You know, more is better. More details. You know, create this vast universe of something. Um, and I don't agree with it at all. I absolutely agree that less is more, because with quantity, you know, there's this economist named Herbert Simon who said that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention, and I think that's the case with beauty too. When you have, you know, too many things going on, you lose the stuff that actually does matter. You lose clarity, you lose the vision, you lose the intention behind the painting, the poem, the song. You lose the intention behind it. You lose basically everything that matters with it, and it's something that, you know, I think it's one of those things that only can take you time to experience. So I don't really regret it, but I realize that simplicity is probably everything. I think simplicity, you know, Leonardo da Vinci said, you know, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Yeah, so appreciating simplicity, less is more, is something I would have not agreed with when I was younger, and now it's pretty much it's the gold standard for me. Yeah, and my other big regret would be I was obsessed with doing stuff that's original and novel and unique, but you can take that actually too far. You can make it at the expense of honesty and sincerity. You can actually get to the point, I think, as an artist where you sacrifice your own identity just to create something, you know, cool, just to create something new, unique, even if you're economically in the right direction financially. That was a big regret too. So that's a big way beauty has changed in my life. So if I see something, some work of art that's very honest, that's very, very honest, even if it's not attractive on the surface, um, like a song that doesn't sound great, but if I can see that it's an honest song, I appreciate it more than a beautiful song. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I should say that in a different way. I think, for example, that uh, for example, if you there is some I'm completely agree with you. I find that sometimes beauty is and poetry is somewhere where you don't
It is.
expect it, and also in very simple things, you know. For example, yesterday I was listening. You don't know him because he's not famous outside France, but I was listening music from a singer, very simple singer, you know, pop singer, very. It's considered very low, you know. He's not doing, you know, compositions very special. And, as you describe with a lot of things, what you can say, this is beauty, you know. But I found him more beautiful, what he expressed, than a lot of things what in France with the pop music, they try to tell us that it's fantastic because, you know, the lyrics, they are very sophisticated because the
Yeah.
musicians play a lot of notes, etc. And that guy, and strange enough, this person, I discovered that he was a classical pianist, in fact, and the song looked so simple, so naive. In fact, they were very beautiful, very sensitive, and I defend him a lot. But to defend him, I have to play a little bit the dandy. You know, that's mean that because he's considered very low, so I defend him compared with other ones that they put at the top. You know,
Yeah.
like for example. If I compare with, I did it last time. I compare with make a joke with that, but
I don't know a lot of I don't know a lot of French musicians, unfortunately. So
but I choose on purpose. I choose English musicians. There was a friend who was a very good friend of mine. He's very specialized. He's doing a lot of radio emissions about pop music, and he was telling me that Genesis, the band Genesis, was a very good band. That the Foxtrot, the LP, was fantastic, and I said no, I don't like it. And this was very shocked because everybody recognized that Foxtrot and Genesis are very good musicians, very good composer. And I say no, that's not true. They sing bad. The musically it's very poor because they do a lot of notes, but why? I don't feel anything about that. But I prefer the band Slade. You don't know because it's not your generation. Who was a very miserable band because the power of the voice is really better. It's better written. It's more energetic and it's more powerful. So I prefer that. And yes, because I think that sometimes it's a mistake to think just because there is more notes, more.
yes,
This means nothing. You and me, we love the Velvet Underground. There is almost no note.
I just wanted to tell you the only French musician you might know her that I did spend a lot of time listening to was I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but her name is Catherine Ribeiro. Catherine Ribeiro.
Yes, of course I know.
Yes, I listen to her stuff a lot. She passed away only a couple of years ago. Yeah, but I love her. She had an extraordinary voice. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very nice person and very into poetry. Yeah.
Really,
but,
she was into poetry.
Yeah, but I prefer Velvet Underground.
Yeah, but she's the only French.
I prefer Velvet Underground compared with Genesis. There is more notes in Genesis. They play even better drums. They play better guitar. They do everything better. But there is not one note so good as the ones, according to my taste, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. What I guess a good example. You don't really. What's good is you don't have to know this to. But are you a little bit familiar with like the American blues music? Okay. Yeah. Well, it was basically a recording. I think this is the best example of what we're talking about. So there was this movement called Delta Blues in Mississippi, the southern United States, and it was enslaved Black Americans that grabbed their guitars and they only had some very, very low grade audio recorders and just played their guitar, and most of them were not classically trained, and they start singing, songs about being enslaved, selling your soul. And yet, those songs don't sound good, especially with modern standards, compared to classical music, pop music. But with the amount of soul and intention and intelligence and emotion that's into it, it is a beautiful thing. Even though it doesn't sound beautiful as a song, that's the poetry about it. This is why poetry, I think, precedes music. You can see the poetic intention behind the song. So.
I'm completely agree. I don't know so much about blues music, but when I listen to blues music, the real one, the roots one, it's extremely beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really what American music have made.
Yeah.
I think it's a purity of to listen that, and it make a lot of movements after that, because even the Rolling Stones, the lot of people, Jeff Beck, everybody took a lot from that blues. But you're right. This is really extremely beautiful. That's clear. And it's done with almost nothing. Yeah? It's more difficult because to do that with 2-3 notes to arrive to create an emotion so powerful. My God.
Yeah.
It's easier to make it with 100 notes than just with 3-4 notes. That's more complicated. This is why I
Yeah.
like it so much, Velvet. I like very
Yes.
much. I don't know so much about blues, but
Yes.
every
But
time
Velvet
blues,
Underground definitely prioritized the less is more. I don't know if you know this, but Lou Reed actually said this. It's a really funny quote. He's like, one note is beautiful. No, sorry, one chord is beautiful, two chords is fine, three chords is jazz.
I didn't know.
That's kind of an extreme example of that, but
That's for me.
yeah. And
Yeah. But you have also people who do a lot of notes. And I mean, the movement, Baroque movement, is very. There is a lot of things, and it's beautiful too. It's we can't say that it's just one way to work, but you're right that sometimes less is more. And I remember that when I was younger, I listened to the first album from The Cure. I don't know if you know that band.
the what?
The Cure.
The Cure?
Yeah,
Yes, I know that band.
yeah. It's just very simple, but it's so special, so strange. Just, I love it, and this is why. But the best example is Velvet Underground. I
Yes,
mean,
they are.
it's really done with almost nothing. The drums, I mean, oh, boom boom, ta, boom boom, ta, boom boom, ta, boom boom, and these create an emotion more than. Phil Collins with his drums everywhere, with a big drum, so big that you can't see him almost, for to do what, mass, for me it's a mass. And you hear boom, da, boom, boom, from the velvet, and you feel something so powerful. It's incredible.
Yeah. And then my last question of the day. This is another pretty heavy question, but I invite you to take your time.
It's
So,
difficult. Your questions are difficult, yes.
if someone wanted to build a more meaningful life, um, considering all the beauty you've surrounded yourself with, which I think is an extraordinary amount. If somebody wanted to build a more beautiful, meaningful life, would you encourage them to change what surrounds them, or change how they perceive what surrounds them?
There you are really in very, you are in very philosophical questions.
Yeah, I mean that's where. Which one comes first? That maybe that'll be simpler.
I think the way you see things, as we said just before,
Yes.
the way you see the things are immediately the power. It's what you feel, what is really the most important. If you're a poet and you're, I don't know, you're living in an area awful, what everybody found awful, but the poet found that beautiful, that means that this is more important. Because that means that he's able to see things that the others can't see. But in the same time, beauty is also a culture, because you have to learn things about beauty. It's not only that you discover the beauty like that. It's good. It's really very perfect to be to feel that. But you also need some culture for the beauty. You need also to get to understand the language of that also. So it's difficult to answer back to you about this question, because it's a little bit the two, both are possible, because it's important also to live. Imagine, for example, you have people, they have no knowledge, no culture, nothing. They go to see horrible things in horrible restaurants. I have people that I go to Marbella in Spain. It's so food, so ugly, and they find that they have the impression that they are in beauty. No, it's not beauty, because they don't have culture. Because if they have culture, they should prefer Firenze, Venice, than this horrible place of tourism, But because they don't have the culture, they don't have the language, they don't get educated, so they don't feel anything. That's the reality. But the other reality too is when Michel Houellebecq, you know him, he's a very famous, very famous writer from France and poet. He's the main poet from France.
Say it one more time, his name?
Houellebecq. Michel
Houellebecq?
Houellebecq.
Okay.
And this, and he said to me once, one evening, he said, I love Benidorm. What Benidorm is a place in Spain, what is considered very ugly. You know, because there are towers, you have people drinking beers, you know, it's not at all very sexy, you know, but he find it beautiful. And he's right. I've been there and I found it special. And this fact that it's special create beauty. So, in a way, if you don't have the culture, the education, you can't see the things that are beautiful. But if you are not sensitive, you can't see also things what the people can think it is ugly, but they are not. It's not. You know, it's the paradox of that. Mm-hmm. And it's complicated. But the poet is able to do both. He's able to have the culture.
That's the important part. A poet can do both.
He has both. He can be in Venice and say, my God, this is the most beautiful place in the world. But in the same time, he can be in Benidorm, you know, and find that beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I guess, so this is our shorter discussion about beauty today. And I would just like to conclude this by reading a small excerpt from an essay that was written by the American poet Walt Whitman, where he talked about beauty and art. And I would just like to read this to close this off, to give it a good note after our chaotic start. So it goes as follows. I think 10 million supple-fingered gods are perpetually employed hiding beauty in the world, burying it everywhere in everything, and most of all in spots that men and women do not think of and never look. I do not doubt, but the majesty and beauty of the world are latent in any iota of the world. There is enough of unaccountable importance and beauty in every step we tread. I think that's a very beautiful quote. And so this concludes the 4th episode of.
John is very close about what we discussed about just now.
Yeah, it was. Yes, maybe people hide it and we have to find it. That's what it is. Also, it's not just seeing it; we have to find it too. So yeah. So this concludes our 4th episode of Ideas from the New Poetry. We will resume next week talking about defenses against poetry. And this has been John Bernys and Leonardo Marcos. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you.